good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you may be looking at this podcast series we call Race, Culture in the Church. Race, Culture in the Church. And I think it's important that I describe what I'm talking about in terms of race, culture, and church. And I use a Venn diagram as a window to look through. One circle would be race. One circle would be culture. One circle would be the church. We don't shy away from who we are. We are Christian in our belief. And we are City Church of Sacramento on the corner of 4th Avenue and 39th Street. But this podcast series is Race, Culture, and the Church. And somewhere along the line, we like to intersect all three circles. Most of the time, we get at least 2 out of 3. And when we're really good, we'll get 3 out of 3. But I am absolutely pleased to welcome into this space the new East Area Command of Sacramento PD, Captain Stephen Moore. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, Pastor.
So how long have you been East Area Commander now?
Since September 24th. So I think we're going on right around 8 weeks, 9 weeks, something
October,
like that.
November, December. So you're coming up on a 3-month anniversary, Christmas Eve, 3-month anniversary.
Yes, sir.
As my father would ask, if you knew then what you know now, no regrets?
None whatsoever.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll dig into that and see if we can't change. No, I'm not going to try and change. I'm going to change your mind. Again, my exhaustive research, which means scraping information off of websites of organizations that you represent. In this case, SAC PD's website. So if it's incorrect, we'll blame SAC PD. But you've been with the department since 2004.
I have.
12 years. What? No. 18 years.
18 years.
18 years. That's a long time.
It is. It's in the current environment with the age of our organization, I'm quickly becoming one of the old guys.
A young guy, OG. So 18 years. You served at Santa Clara Juvenile Hall. You got a bachelor's degree in computer engineering, master's degree in emergency services administration from Santa Clara University and from Cal State Long Beach, respectively. And I like this trailing paragraph that says, despite getting a degree in engineering, Stephen realized he wanted a career where he made a difference, was part of a team, and got to experience something new every day. Now, I won't take offense. I'm a civil engineer by vocation. So the fact that you got out of engineering because you wanted to make a difference, I guess you wanted to make a difference.
I think that'd be accurate.
So unpack that for me. What does that look like? A difference. So you're in the middle. You've got your degree. You had the wherewithal. It's like, okay, well, I'm invested now. Let me go ahead and graduate. But this is not what I want to do.
No, you're right. And so, growing up, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. It was time to go to college, and every kid, they think about being a cop, being all of these things. I wanted to be an astronaut. I planned to be the president, and then drive a bus when I was done.
Oh, yeah.
Doctor, all of those things. And I really wanted to go to the military. And so, my plan was I was going to go to one of the military academies. But the final step of that is a physical, and I have asthma. And this was after the first Desert War. And so that ended up falling through because I didn't pass the medical. And so I've always been into computers. I was a bit of a nerd as a kid. Back before the internet, they had what we called bulletin board systems, where you'd use your modem and you'd call into it, and then you could communicate with other people. And so when it was time for me to go to college, I thought, all right, I want to be a computer guy. And so I did my research. Santa Clara University had a really, really good engineering program in computers. And they also had a really good financial aid package. And so I ended up going there.
That's important. That's really important.
It was, it couldn't have happened without it. And I had a great time, met some good friends. I did really well in the classes I cared about. I did not necessarily keep my nose to the grindstone all the time. But, I got through, and I had an internship, I think, going into my senior year. And it was great. I made more money than I'd ever seen before. I was doing work that I enjoyed. I loved the people I worked with. But it didn't inspire me. And I had a hard time staying behind a desk. I had a hard time just, coming to work every day and being there for 8 hours. And I knew what the day was going to look like. And at the end of the day, I knew what the next day was going to look like. So I ran cross country in college. And there was an officer from the Santa Clara Police Department who came to one of our like all athlete meetings and said that they were looking for student athletes to talk at DARE graduation speeches. And so that was, the DARE to keep kids off drugs kind of thing. And so I went and I volunteered and I did a couple of those, and he invited me to go for a ride along. And I saw, even in a relatively safe city like Santa Clara, just what an impact the job was and how you never really knew what the next call was going to be. And you came and you brought stability to chaos. And I really enjoyed that. And so I started, looking down that road. My girlfriend at the time, she was a counselor at the juvenile hall down there. So I started doing that. And I started applying to police departments. But it turned out that 4 years of computer engineering studies did not prepare me for the police officer interviews. And so I struggled.
In what way? What were they looking for, and what didn't you bring to the table?
I think my biggest problem was just, being able to have a conversation, right? Because you go to school and it's all about the math and the science and the ones and zeros and how the code is going to look and how it's going to work. And you didn't really interview, right? Because your work product was your interview. Mm-hmm. And so walking into a room with 3 police officers who'd ask you questions and how you'd handle a situation, I had no idea what the right answer was because I had no background in law enforcement. And also just being able to have that conversation, I really, really struggled. And so it wasn't an easy task for me. This was 2002-ish. And so the dot-com bubble had just burst. Agencies that had been hiring, they were stopping. But I found Sacramento PD was hiring. My only experiences out here had been running track or cross-country races either in Davis or at Sac. So I didn't know much about the city, but they were hiring. And I thought, let's see if I can make this happen, and it worked out.
Wow. Was it a love relationship at first sight, both with Sac PD and you with them? I guess I'd have to ask the interviewer to actually, to be fair, but did you know, let me just put it this way, did you know after the interview, I could work for these folks?
Yes, absolutely. And so my final hiring interview was with then Deputy Chief Rick Brazil, who then became our chief and has since retired. And we had a good conversation. And one of the things I was wondering, because my mom, when I told her I wasn't going to be a computer engineer and that I was going to be a cop, her big concern, in addition to my safety and the fact that cops don't tend to make as much money as computer engineers, was that I wasn't going to be intellectually challenged. And so after speaking with my background investigator and then in my hiring interview with Chief Brazil, my question for him was like, how does the department look at training? Like, what kind of priority is that for Sac PD? Because I figured an agency that invests a lot in training is an educated organization, and like, he went through everything that Sac PD does to train its officers, and at that point, I was sold. I figured that this was a place I can work. This is a place that's going to make me as good as I can be, and after that chat, I knew that I would be kept on my toes. It wasn't something you just slouched through.
Wow. That was 18 years ago. 18 years is a long time. Dare I say, that's a generation. That's from cradle to you're out of high school and in college. So you've had to have seen an evolution of sorts. Maybe that's too strong a word, but you've seen enough change. What have you seen just on a 30,000-foot level in terms of Sacramento as a community, Sacramento vis-a-vis policing? What have you seen?
So I will start by saying that I think Sac PD has always been ahead of the curve. Right? You go to our training and then you train with other agencies throughout the state, throughout the nation. And I think that Sac PD has always been ahead of where other agencies are. And there are agencies today, in other states and maybe some in this state that are just now getting to where we were 18 years ago when I started. But with that being said, I think that we are very much a learning organization. And so some of the stuff, and there's been a ton of change in the last 18 years. There's been massive amounts in the last 6, 7, or 8. But just the effort that we go through to prevent violent encounters, I think that is one of the biggest things that has changed over the years that I have seen. I mean, we have changed the way that we do business. We've changed our tactics to be safer. We've added just a plethora of equipment to try to make our officers' safety and the members of the community we interact with safer. And so I think that the biggest change that I've seen at SAC PD is the length we're willing to go and that we're able to go to prevent us from having to use force and especially use deadly force on a member of the community who may be in crisis either due to mental health or narcotic use, or may just be having, one of those days that they are pushing past what they would normally do. And the likelihood of that event turning deadly is significantly lower now than it was when I first started.
So 18 years in terms of that's SAC PD and how they approach community. What have you seen in terms of from an officer in blue? If I were to ask the 18-year younger Officer Moore, then define community, and now I'm asking Captain Moore to define community, I'm assuming those definitions would be different, or would they?
I don't know that the definition would be different, but the perception of the community has changed. Absolutely. And so I think the reason I say that is when I first started, right, you're a patrol officer pushing a patrol car. I worked mostly South Sacramento on our late watch, so middle of the night. There are not a lot of positive interactions working late watch. Like, people call because they are in crisis, either they themselves or a member of their family, or they've been victimized by somebody else. And so those interactions have a tendency to be more contentious than our day-to-day interactions with anybody else. And so I think my perception was that the community did not like us. And that was, 2004. And there's a ton that's happened in the interim. Today, in the position that I sit in, and I have to admit, my context is different. I don't go out to calls for service. I attend meetings, and I work with our young officers, and I work with members of the community, and I have conversations with community members that are dissatisfied with the service they've received. But I think I see now that there really is a lot of support for law enforcement, our organization, and the members that are out there doing the work. And so had you asked me 18 years ago, did the Sacramento community like cops? I would have said no. I think that today I can say yes. Not everybody, and not everybody's pleased with everything that we do, but I think that the majority of the community does at least appreciate the work that we put in and the service that we render. And once again, it's not everybody. There are some people that don't like us.
Everybody doesn't like chocolate chip ice cream, and I don't understand that. But I get it. I get what you're sharing. Not that I'm trying to be fair. This is an unfair question, but you've been East Area Commander now for not quite 3 months, coming up on 3 months. You're coming behind Captain Halstead, coming behind Captain Bassett. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I don't need this is not a revelation. You're your own man, and you're going to bring you into whatever conversation, whatever role. Let me ask a basic question. What does an East Area Commander do? It's a really good and fair question, and my answer 9 months from now might be a little bit different as I get more of a handle on the East Area, right? But first and foremost, any command captain, one of our primary jobs is to distill the department's message, which is the chief's message, and relay that and distribute that to our people, right? And so I have 3 lieutenants, I have 8.5 sergeants, and I have 80-something officers, right? And so one of my primary duties is to make sure that the direction the department is going is being communicated to my cops who are out here doing police work so that they can perform the services the way that our department wants. So that is universal. That is my job for the East Command. North, South, and Central, their captains all have that same task. And the East, West, North, South bounds of your geographic area are? So for us in the East area, our western bound is Highway 99. Okay. Our northern bound is the river. Okay. And then east and south are both the county lines. Okay. I execute the plan from the chief. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what do you do? Right? No, it's a fair question, right? And so part of it is evaluating my officers to make sure that they are doing what we asked. And so anytime that we receive a complaint, I investigate. Somebody will investigate it. They'll provide me a summary.
I will review the investigation. I'll review whatever video, audio, written documents need to be reviewed and make a determination whether we did or did not violate policy. If we did, then I determine what the consequences should be for that. There is a lot of working with the community to make sure that their voices are being heard, right? Because if you have an issue and you call, and it's a police issue, and you call 911 or you call our non-emergency number, our dispatchers will triage that. They'll enter the call if it's something that we're going to respond to, and the officers will go out. Sometimes there's more to the story that the dispatcher can't gather. Sometimes there's more to the story that the officer either doesn't see or can't see. And so part of my job is to be available to community members to, when they have that problem that we're not able to resolve, take a second look at it and make sure that we're doing everything that we can to try to bring some sort of satisfaction to it. And then utilize whatever resources we have available to make sure that happens. Some of it is keeping my folks motivated. It can be challenging at times in this profession, especially in the day and age that we're in. And so making sure that people understand that, hey, the community folks, they do appreciate what you're doing. What you do matters, right? Those same reasons that I got into law enforcement, a lot of them did. And make sure that they keep their eye on the prize and the bigger picture. And it's not just the one call they went on where somebody wasn't very nice to them, but this is what you do for society. This is the role that you play in society. And it comes, like, there's some costs to that. But just making sure that they keep their head in the game and continue moving forward in the direction we want them to move forward. And then, I attend a lot of meetings. And I write a lot of emails. But I am part of that path of communication between the community and the department and upper management and the folks that I work with out of the East Command.
I'm getting this image of, you probably don't remember these things. They were big back when I was a kid. Those paint by number pictures. You'd have this image with outlines, and you'd have, okay, this color is number 1, this color is number 2, this color, and so on, and you paint by number. And I'm hearing that there's a bit of a paint by number. Well, I'm painting the numbers that are printed on this piece of paper, and probably less of a Bob Ross approach to creating, happy little mistakes, all those types of things where I'm not saying freelance or even go rogue, but where does Captain Moore come in? And where's the intersection of Captain Moore, the visionary, and Captain Moore, paint by number?
So I like that metaphor. And I'm going to move it a little bit or massage it a little bit.
Go right ahead.
So I would say that the chief of police tells me we're going to paint a horse, right? I'm like, okay, cool, we're going to paint a horse. So then my job is to draw the horse that we're going to paint and provide the outline or the beginning of the outlines, maybe the large sections. So horse is a horrible example because they tend to be the same color.
Unless you're in Appaloosa or...
There we go,
or
exactly,
whatever.
right? And so I draw the horse, I draw the outline of the horse, and then my job is to make sure that I message to the folks that work in my command, this is what the final horse should look like. Now, I'm going to give it to somebody else to finish providing all the outlines, right? So the lieutenants and the sergeants, they will take the horse that I have drawn, and they will section off where the spots are going to be on that horse. And they will section off where the eyes go and where the ears go and the nose. And then they will give that to their officers, and they will paint in the spots, and they'll complete the paint by the numbers. And then my job is to take a look at this finished product of the horse and say, yes, that is the horse that we wanted to draw, or no, that's not the horse that we wanted to draw. And then figure out, if it's not, how I can give better direction on how to make it look like it should look.
Now that's a unidirectional, to extend the metaphor, that's unidirectional. That's coming from Chief Lester to say, we're painting horses. And actually the community may say, you know what, we'd like you to we'd like you to plant potatoes, something totally different. I guess I should have asked Chief Lester, at what point does there becomes a back and forth with community and the institution in terms of, well, doggone it, I'm going to give you this. Well, I don't want this, I want this. Where does that exchange happen? Is it at the Captain Moore level? Is it at the Chief Lester level? Is it at, I don't know. Maybe it is. Is it at the beat cop level?
I would say that happens at every level because, like, you're absolutely right. Paint by numbers, that is unidirectional. It goes downhill. We have interactions with members of the community every day. I have meetings almost every day with folks. The lieutenants have meetings. The sergeants have interactions. The officers have interactions. The chief absolutely has interactions. And so it is our job to listen and figure out, okay, what is the community asking for? And any level of the organization can take that information in and should take that information in. And I would say does take that information in. And even though we are a paramilitary organization, so we have a military organizational structure, the communication, much like in the military, does have to go both ways. And so if the officers hear something that they think needs to be brought to our attention, then we have that interaction. Either they go to their sergeant or they go to the lieutenant, or we talk about it in a roll call briefing at the beginning of their shift. If I hear something that either the officers need to know or the chief needs to know, then we communicate that up and or down so that the folks who are in a position to either act on it or make decisions based upon it have that. And so we have, like I mentioned earlier, I go to a lot of meetings. A lot of those are internal meetings. Every Tuesday I have at least 2 meetings within the department where we talk about trends that we're seeing or things that we've heard that maybe we need to evaluate or policies that we need to change or events that we should support. And so it is a constant ongoing part of what I do, but it's also an ongoing part of what every member of the department does. Because I have several officers working the streets right now. If they hear from a community group that there is something they don't like about how we're doing our job, I can almost guarantee you they'll have that conversation with their sergeant. And that information gets filtered because not everybody can hear absolutely everything that gets said.
Sure.
But we look at on an ongoing basis what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it, and are we providing the service the community wants? And I'd say that a great example of this is the violence crime reduction plan that we're working on. The last couple of years have been really rough on not just Sacramento City, but the entire nation when it comes to violent crime. But part of that process in developing and implementing this violent crime reduction program was going to the community and asking the community, okay, here are the areas where we've identified high incidences of violent crime. How do you want us to address these? So it's not us bringing our solution into the community, but us working with the community to develop a solution for a problem that plagues all of us.
You had mentioned to me in an earlier conversation about having community members be a part of a group discussion, or not. I don't want to use the word training, but I can't think of a better one right now. But basically an orientation session.
The Community Engagement Academy.
Community Engagement Academy. Okay. So is that a part of what you were just describing, that academy itself? Is that a component of that?
It is a component of our larger communication with the community and coming up with how we're going to address things. It's not necessarily part of the violent crime reduction plan.
Okay.
That is separate, and it needs to be timely because we didn't want to implement anything without talking to the community first. But the Community Engagement Academy is something that we've been running for the last, I want to say 8 or 9 years at this point. It started as the Cops and Clergy Academy, and then we wanted to expand it to secular parts of society as well. Mm-hmm. But it is an opportunity for members of our community to come in and see, what we do, how we do it, why we do it. There involves a ride-along. They hear from our Internal Affairs Division. They hear from Office of Public Safety Accountability, detectives, gang officers, just a myriad of components of SACPD. And so it gives them an opportunity to hear about us, but also to share their experiences with us, and tell us how they feel about the things that they're hearing. Because it's really hard to make recommendations if you don't know where things stand today. It's much easier when you have a broader view of, okay, this is what's going on and this isn't what I like, versus, well, there's something out there and I don't like it, but I don't know what it is because I haven't had a chance to see behind the curtain.
So when is the next academy opening up?
I believe that the next one will be started in June or July.
So those that may be watching this podcast that are interested and they're part of your East Area Command, what do they have to do?
So the best way to keep informed is to follow us on social media. We have Twitter, we have Facebook, I think we have Instagram. And so anytime that we're going to start a community engagement academy, we put that out on all of our social media platforms so that people can be aware and can turn in an application. That is the easiest way without having, I guess, a direct communication with one of us. Anybody that's interested can absolutely email me. It's S as in Stephen, Moore, M-O-O-R-E, at sacpd.org. And so if I get an email from somebody that's interested, we'll add them to the interest list so that we can make sure that they have an opportunity to turn an application the next time we run the program. But we always make sure we put it out as far and wide as we can so that as many members of our community have an opportunity to see it as possible.
Speaking of community again, I know we're running out of time. Are you willing to go where you may not be welcome?
You know, it's a fair question, and absolutely. So before I was in my current role, I worked up in our North Command. But prior to that, I worked in our Outreach and Engagement Division for 3 years as the lieutenant running that. And there were two, I think, primary examples of having done this and just the willingness the department is to participate, even in environments where we're not welcome, that I think highlight the PD commitment. And so I want to say it was 2020 during the height of the civil unrest we were experiencing. One of the groups that was out by Arden Fair Mall, they wanted to talk to a lieutenant. And so myself and one of my sergeants, we went out and we had a conversation with the group, and they were really, really unhappy with law enforcement in general, and Sac PD, obviously representing law enforcement in the city of Sacramento. But they were really unhappy with us. But we had an opportunity to exchange information with some of the folks participating in that protest. And so we worked with them to set up a community forum where myself and some of my staff, and unfortunately it was during COVID, so it was virtual, joined a virtual meeting and answered the questions that the community had. And it wasn't easy, and it wasn't a bunch of law enforcement supporters, and it was uncomfortable, and I think that that's a good thing for us to be out of our comfort zone sometime. But it doesn't matter who the group is, if they are willing to have a conversation with us or even vent their frustration to us, we'll do it. And it's something that it's hard to say that I like because nobody really likes being yelled at, but it's important.
Do you find not that this was a specific invitation, do you find that general community meetings, are they helpful? I guess any meeting can't hurt, but in terms if the scale of the meeting is too large, then are you really getting at the real issues, or are you just responding to the loudest voices, if you will?
No, it's a good point. And any meeting is positive, right? Just being there, having the interaction, that is a good thing. And hopefully by the end of it, we're at least able to see each other as human beings. Super large meetings are challenging, right? You go to a city council meeting and there's 200 people. If there's a time limit on the amount of time people have to talk, then there are some folks that are not going to have an opportunity to speak. I would say somewhere in the ballpark of 15 to 20 people is ideal if you really want to have a conversation, right? Because then you truly can have a conversation between 15 or 20 people. You get much more than that, and you do run the risk of the loudest voice taking over, which isn't a bad thing, right? That serves its purpose. If somebody is speaking for the larger audience, then that's okay. But if we really want to have a conversation and get to know each other and really try to dig into some of the issues, then it needs to be ongoing and it needs to be a manageable size group.
So where are those opportunities happening now? If they're not happening now, what do we need to do to make that happen?
So they do happen to some degree. We have ongoing Cops and Coffees kind of events. The department has some ongoing community advisory groups that will bring members of the community to come in and look at specific problems through the lens of whatever community group they represent. But it's one of those things that, and I can only speak for the East Command, we could absolutely improve on, right? But it requires a community liaison who wants to be the primary person representing the community, who's going to draw in the community members. And then it requires the commitment on my part and the part of the folks that I work with to show up and be a part of that conversation.
So within the 95817, is there anything that comes to mind immediately in terms of that scale of interaction?
We have had some ongoing conversations with Pastor Sadler over at Shiloh Baptist. I believe we called it Community Conversations. It wasn't East Area specific. It was more department organized. But there were some recurring members from the community who would come, and we'd talk about whatever is going on within our community as a whole. Other than neighborhood associations and business associations, which I think we do have that consistency with. The Oak Park
Neighborhood Association, Oak Park Business Association.
Oak Park Business Association, yes. Oak Park Neighborhood Association, we're working on rebuilding that relationship. But the Oak Park Business Association in the 95817, we do have some consistent conversations. And then there's some organizations that we work with where we do have an opportunity to interact with both the organization heads and some of the folks that attend.
Will your lieutenant be attending the Oak Park BA now? Okay, yes. Because it was Lieutenant Jeff that was there before. Okay. I am out of time. I want to get it before we conclude this portion of our discussion. From your perch, where do we stand with community, old-fashioned word, comity, COMMITY. It's peace. It's goodwill. It's safety. It's all of those things. Give from your perch. Give Oak Park a grade. How do you see? How are things going now from your perspective? C. I assume we won't get a D. You, from your perspective, C, B, probably not an A.
You know, that's hard. I don't want to give a grade, but what I will say, unless you make me, but what I will say is that some of the challenges we've seen in the past have started to dissipate, but new ones are coming up. And by that, I mean, I do not want to jinx us, but we historically have had some pretty significant gang violence issues in Oak Park. And some of those have affected a lot of our community members. That is not the predominant problem that we're seeing today. What we are seeing now is, and I don't know if this is because of COVID, I don't know if this is because of what's going on economically in the United States, I don't know if it's because of what's going on politically, but we are seeing interpersonal issues spill out onto the streets more than they used to. And we are seeing domestic issues become more violent than they have in the past. And so there's an intersection between those and fatal incidents that is very worrisome to us.
Does SAC PD have a robust or any mental health unit to help in that area?
We do. So we do have a mental health unit. I don't know that I could say it's robust because mental health treatment is more of a county endeavor than the city, but we do.
But unfortunately, you are the first responders.
But we are the first responders. And so we do. We have a mental health team that will come out if they are working and help work through some of the mental health related calls. If officers respond to a call and they realize that, all right, there's a strong mental health component to this, then they'll have the mental health unit either come out that shift or send them names to follow up on, and we see that on a daily basis. But I think the other part of it, because we're first responders and we're 24/7, and we might be there at 3 o'clock in the morning, or might be there at 11 o'clock in the afternoon or in the morning. Every one of our officers, when they graduate the academy, they receive what I would call pretty extensive for our profession mental health training. It's a 40-hour crisis intervention training program where they learn how to communicate with people who are experiencing crisis, some tools for de-escalating, and the resources that are available for them. And so even if, and we're not going to be able to solve some of these mental health issues on site, but we can be a navigator to get them to the resources that hopefully will help them. The challenge for us is then making sure that they follow through. And I have some family members that suffer with similar issues, and that is always our challenge, is making sure that they get the help that they need and they don't decide that they're okay when, from our perspective as family members, they're just not.
It's the dirty little secret that's not a secret. Every family, and I do mean every, capital EVERY _ has a level of mental health issue that either we're willing to step into that space and say, oh yeah, I live there, or someone, to their detriment, nah, it doesn't happen here. No, it's happening there. To that point, we recently engaged UC Davis Health. We're going to engage, hopefully, Sutter Health to do just that very thing. Enter into that space of mental health, because that seems to be a root problem to a lot of issues, not the least of which is homelessness. That if you don't deal with that, you could provide someone with housing, they won't last in that situation very long unless you deal with the underlying issue. Captain Moore, I am honored that you came into this space and were willing to answer some questions, none of which were emailed to you in advance, and just appreciate you. Needless to say, again, I don't shy away from who we are. We are Christian, and I will be praying for you as well as the officers that serve our community, for your safety, for your wisdom, that the interactions with our community, with the 95817, are what they need to be, and are not contentious by anything that we would bring to the table. I ask everyone that enters into this space, are you willing to come back? I'm not asking you. You have to come back because you are the East Area Commander for our area. So I will be reaching out to you in the not too distant future to ask more of the same questions that I've just asked. And hopefully we'll have some successes to point to, some tangible successes to point to and say, this is what's going on in the Oak Park community, and it's due in no small part to Captain Stephen Moore.
I look forward to the invitation. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you so much.